Welcome to the third annual Indianapolis GP Editorial Seminar. My name is Matthew Miles, and I'm the managing editor at Cycle World, and I'll be your host for today's discussion. I'm from nearby Lafayette, and spent a lot of time here at the Speedway, so it's always a thrill for me to come back to this great racetrack, especially for MotoGP. Glad to be able to join us this morning. We've assembled an exciting panel here this morning. Many of you will no doubt recognize 1993 500cc World Champion Kevin Schwantz. He's the manager this weekend for Team American Honda, Moriwaki. And to his left is Moto2 wildcard riding for Kevin on the Moriwaki MD600, Roger Hayden. To my right is a fellow American, Moto2 regular, riding for the Jack and Jones by Antonio Banderas team, Kenny Noyes. And finally, to his right, Cycle World technical editor and Mr. TDC himself, Kevin Cameron. I've prepared a few questions for the panel, and I'm hoping that as we go along with the answers that any of you guys want to offer any other comments, that'd be great. And then we're going to, toward the end here, we'll open it up for questions from you folks. Kevin, I'll start with you. Can you give us a little background on how you became involved in this American Honda Moto2 effort?
Yeah, Matt. We use CBR Hondas at the Schwantz School now, and Ray Blank and I talk pretty frequently, and Ray kept asking me questions. Ray's the president of American Honda. He kept asking me questions about Moto2, and I thought, you know, it's kind of funny that I see him walking up in the back. He's going to verify this whole story for us soon. But he kept asking me questions about Moto2, and, you know, what would you do if you were going to put a team together? Who would you have ride for you? And, you know, and we got down to talking about riders, and then he says, who would you get to manage it for you? And just one thing led to another. I threw my name in the hat when he said manager. And he jumped at the opportunity, much like we did when we came up with the name Roger Lee Hayden for the riders. So, just it's been a great, it's been great to work with Honda at school, and for me, the opportunity to manage this team was a door that was open that I never even thought twice about walking through.
Speaking of the school, you've been at Barber for 3 years now. Is that right?
This is our second full year at Barber.
Okay. Do you see this Moto2 opportunity, this relationship with American Honda possibly turning into something full season for Moto2 or maybe even MotoGP next season or down the road?
Well, I'd like to think that, that something will come of it, but I know as of right now our goal and our mission this weekend is to do the best we can here at Indianapolis, and after that there's been not much else talked about. So we'll hope that from a manager's perspective and a rider's perspective that we'll put our best foot forward, and there will be more stuff happening after this. But right now, this is all we're doing.
Roger, you've been pretty much the busiest guy in racing this year. You had, of course, the first full season of World Superbike for Pedercini Kawasaki, and MotoGP stand-in for Randy Dupugnier on the LCR Honda at Laguna. And now you've got this Moto2 effort with Kevin. How do you keep everything straight?
It's definitely been it's been pretty difficult for me for the travel, I guess, just so much from America back to the U.S., back to Europe, doing the World Superbike, you know, different bikes all the time. And when we went to the Barber test, I think you could kind of tell that 2 weeks ago that I was just mentally, I was just done, because I would go, they'd make big changes and I'd come back in and I would just, I don't even know. You know, I was just done for it. But, you know, it's been awesome for me. It's, you know, I think I'm probably the only guy who's did, in just a 12-month period, I've raced AMA, World Superbike, MotoGP, and Moto2. So probably the only guy who's ever did that. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but for me, I'm just fortunate to have the opportunities that I have right now, because, you know, there's not a lot of rides out there, and I've been given the opportunity now at the end of the season to get on some good bikes and hopefully show my potential.
MotoGP is very advanced electronically. Moto2 is a little more conventional. Can you sort of describe the differences? I mean, coming from the MotoGP bike to this bike this weekend, the differences electronically and how that affects your riding?
I get the biggest difference was the power. The Moto2 bikes are pretty much just a stock 600, so it's not very fast down the straightaway. And when we rode the MotoGP bike, we didn't even mess with half the electronics because there were so many of them. You have wheelie control, traction control. What do you want the bike to do in this corner, that corner? Each corner you design the bike with however you want. Where on the Moto2 bike, it doesn't have so much of the electronics. It's more just kind of ride the bike.
You've also ridden on 3 different brands of tires, Pirelli, Bridgestone, and now Dunlop, in these different series. How can you keep the tires and their different characteristics? How can you keep those separate?
Well, I guess the biggest difference was the GP tires for me were a little bit different because the races were so much longer. I felt like the tire was built a little different than what I was used to. But always the first practice I have to kind of readjust myself to what I'm doing, and also I do a lot of training and stuff, and I try to visualize what I'm doing before I get on the bike. When I come from a GP to World Superbike, I try to do mentally laps in my head of riding a Superbike or bike riding a 600. So sometimes it's difficult, but you just try to prepare yourself the best you can. And luckily for me, I have a lot of people that I can go to for advice. Kevin, my brothers. So for me, I have a lot of resources, and I just have to use them.
That's great. Kenny, one of the things I was thinking about is you tested this Kawasaki 600, fundamentally a local racer's bike here. What are your impressions of the Speedway so far?
It's actually a lot of things were different from what I expected. Watching on TV, some of the corners seemed faster than they were, and the track also seemed a little simpler on paper. But when you get out there, it's cool. They got a lot of decreasing radius corners, and obviously I was on the Kawasaki, but it's it's a 600, so the engine was similar. It's actually a little faster than our Moto2s, so it was a Wera bike from Gene, a racer called Gene Bertram, and it was surprising, because it's basically a club level good bike, but it's had a little more engine than our World Championship bikes.
Can you compare this track to tracks that you're familiar with, say, in Spain and other tracks you've raced in Europe?
Yeah, well, being an oval, built inside of an oval, it's flat and it's definitely tighter than a lot of the tracks over there. But it's cool. It doesn't feel like a normal track inside of an oval. I mean, it feels like a proper racetrack, and it has a flow to it. So it's just a little tighter, and I think with 43 Moto2s out there, whatever, it's going to be important to get a good start, especially when we get into the tight part back there. But I actually had a good time on. I think turn 1's really cool too. How turn 1 doesn't really have a clear braking point, starts really fast into there. So I think it'll be a good racetrack.
One of the things that a lot of folks here may not know is that you have a lot of dirt track experience. In fact, you won a pro singles dirt track championship here in the U.S., and of course you won a couple of championships, super stock and endurance in Spain. So it gives you a lot of four-stroke experience. Is Moto2 a good fit for you, do you feel?
Well, initially at the beginning of the season, I thought it was going to be awesome because right away in preseason we were really quick, and a lot of these 125 guys were having trouble adjusting to the four-stroke. But at the stage we are now in the season, pretty much everybody's adjusted really well. And a lot of the riders that at first seemed like they were going to struggle this season have picked up on the four-stroke really quick. So, for sure it helps. I think it helped more at the beginning. And for me, the problem this year has been adjusting to some of the faster tracks over there that have a lot of blind corners where I got a tendency also from the four-stroke and from dirt track to stop the bike a little too much. And these Moto2s have really good chassis, and you got to keep your corner speed up, keep your momentum up, and that seems to pay off more than pinching the corners off. So, it's an advantage, but I think the track knowledge and also just a lot of those guys being able to go fast from Friday is, an advantage too.